Hi, witchy friends. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I hope you're feeling not super heavy with everything happening in the world. It's hard, but I wanted to take this moment before we really get into it to focus on our breath because it's going to be heavy. So let's eliminate some of that tension you're holding on to. Close your eyes, straighten out your back, focus on your breath for just a second. Breathe in abundance, success, equity, liberation for marginalized people, people of color, Black people, Indigenous people, queer people. Breathe that all in. Breathe out oppression, instability, stress, white supremacy, internalized racism, or any type of damage that hurts people. All right. Whew, so hopefully you feel a little bit lighter. I want to have a conversation about shamanism. So, shamanism. First, to start, shamanism is an umbrella term because the colonizers didn't really stop and ask questions of the magical folk that they were exterminating. Everyone might have like their own terminology for what they use within their culture. However, shaman is kind of just that term for someone who is magical or has, a lot of knowledge of natural herbal remedies, who is familiar with the medicine that the people within that culture need. It's unfair to me that these traditions were wiped out and then we were primarily forced into Catholicism being the default. Anyone who was not that suffered oppression, violence, etc. So it's just kind of insulting to me that people did that. And then, for example, there was a coup in the United States here. I'm sure everyone is fully aware if, you haven't been paying attention. And that's fair. Also, if you're not in the United States and you don't want to hear about us anymore, I mean, we're exhausting, I think. But one of the gentlemen who barged in, he considered himself a shaman. And I think that this is a very important conversation because I think that these individuals, these white individuals who are not in touch with their own healing that needs to be done. The dude was wearing Viking horns, and excuse me if they were not Viking, that was just what they looked like. That could be my own ignorance, like just a bunch of furs. And upon a thorough Facebook search, I found him and I found an ad that he had placed about the services he provides. And he focuses primarily on the teachings, mostly on the practices of Indigenous people and a lot of traditions of Eastern medicine and Eastern beliefs. So nothing that really connects him to self or his own ancestors. And why this is important, like you're like, why does this matter? Because it's spiritual bypassing. And if you're not familiar with the term spiritual bypassing means that you are skipping ahead in your spiritual journey to have all the answers right away, and you might be acting out of a place of ego. You see this a lot with TikTok and the things that people do and the knowledge that people provide for people who probably should not attempt it, and then they do, and then they're like, help me, what do I do? And I mean, sometimes you got to learn things on your own, but when you spiritually bypass, and again, there are tons of examples of this, and I'll probably list more as we go on. But when you spiritually bypass in the sense that you are not focused on your own ancestral healing, like you are so focused on just learning and filling the void, well, one, you're culturally appropriating, and two, you're really are limiting your healing. You're limiting your healing. Every plant, every tool, that I use has a connection to something about being Mexican American or the indigenous nations that I specifically come from, which are the Huichol and the Cora. I'm not going to act like I'm fully aware of all of the customs and traditions, but I support when I can. And I mean, I don't call myself an indigenous person. I say I have an indigenous roots because I do. And one day I hope to do more to liberate them in whatever way that I can. And that's my work that needs to be done. So if someone is a person of white experience who is, for example, primarily Irish, Irish American, if that person was not focused on connecting to, Celtic traditions, or, if they were of a specific nation, if their desire is not to really connect with things that help heal self, and they, for example, want to learn a whole lot about voodoo, they're spiritually bypassing because they are completely disregarding their own healing and knowledge that needs to be gained in order to fit an aesthetic. And, sometimes we do that early on because we are curious, the lack of knowledge. I think for a lot of people, Wicca was like their first introduction to anything witchy. And you will learn, Mr. Viking horns, I just don't understand. I do understand, actually. I understand that they are the new colonizers in the sense that they are tourists. They go to these places, they learn these traditions, they bring them back, they create new age, whatever, and it's whitewashed. It's for white people now. With that being said, my last note specifically on that is please pay attention who you're getting your healing from. I realize that I am not someone who resonates with everybody as someone to learn from. I don't know if I like the term healer for myself, quite honestly, but, if I say something that resonates with you, by all means, please take that information. At the end of the day, I can only heal myself 100%. I've been made aware of a lot of people who are brujas and healers, and it seems like their only intention is to become a cult leader. You know what I mean? Like, they use their platforms to bring up fucking false information, and they bring up information regarding science and medical related things that they don't fucking know about. And big pharma is terrible. I get it. And a lot of terrible experiments have happened on the backs of marginalized and people of color. Again, I get that too. But science is important. Science has been misused, and I don't think that that's a reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that that is a reason that we should be so grateful for the people of color, the Black people, the Indigenous people, the Latinx people, Asian people who exist in these spaces and are able to help us get a more trusting report. So please be aware of what you take in. With the connecting of self and healing myself, I had a time just in the last couple of weeks where I've just felt really lost and really unsure of what is next in a lot of ways. Metzli Alexandria, who was on a previous episode of the show, you might remember they're a hoodoo root worker, they're a medium, and they just have so many other gifts. They are just such a talented person. I had a session with them and it was gifted to me, like I said, and I didn't know what to expect, and nobody really prepped me for a medium session. And based on that experience, I'm going to be doing an episode with, you guessed it, Tia Maria, that will be coming up in the future with a little bit of Mediumship 101, or at least what to prepare for if you're going to see a medium. I had such a positive experience. I didn't even really necessarily during this reading focus on speaking to my loved ones. It was more so about myself and, what the things that I need to do to be fulfilled, the things that, are on my path that I know I want to do. Am I anywhere close to it? And, what do I need to do to work on it? And I came out just so changed in a lot of ways, because I think it's very easy to be stuck and think that we are humans with spirits, but in reality, we are spiritual beings living a human experience. And sometimes, myself included, 100%, I get so caught up in the human bullshit, the feelings, the situations, the this and that. And it's not that we shouldn't take things seriously, and it's not that we shouldn't make the most of our time while we're here and stand up for people. However, we have to realize that we can only do what's within our power, and by meeting people, collaborating with people, volunteering your time, donating money, donating resources, and connecting with these people, can we all collectively impact. It is a lot of pressure to put it all on yourself, and that is, I think, what can be the most damning part at times of this experience. Because we get so stuck on, it's like you're aware that you can be unstoppable, but then when you feel limited or you can't have the impact that you want, it just really makes you lose sight of everything. That was a really wonderful experience. But I did want to reach out to one of my loved ones because, I'm so disconnected from the practices, and I'm just lucky that there are so many things that are commonplace in my culture and in our traditions and our food and stuff like that, that I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to research the knowledge behind that, and I'm going to figure out what this plant would be useful for, and then I figure out a way to utilize it. I asked Metzli to ask my grandmother if when she was alive she was a witch, and she said no. She said no because nothing that would turn her against God, which is such a fucking Catholic answer, of course, right? But that, I think, was her Catholic guilt, because she was definitely someone who had tons of veladoras, which are like the 7-day candles, and she prayed over them intentionally, and she just wanted a lot of good and protection for her friends and family, which lighting candles with intention is a witch, duh. But Catholics will never admit to you that they're really witches, you know? Book of Psalms, that's spells. There's so many other things. But it was so connecting, and just the things that Metzli passed along. My grandma used to do this thing where she would like wag her finger, kind of like shaking it, like, no, that's not true. And when I had asked if she was a witch, she did that. And not only that, she body shamed me from beyond the grave. More so, I guess, my eating habits. She told me to stop stress eating late at night, which is true. Sometimes I stress eat late at night, and I'm working on it. Again, my grandmother was that type of person. My grandmother would totally tell you, once she saw you after months, you'd gain some weight, or hey, maybe you should stop eating so much. My grandmother was that person. And I don't know, it was just a reminder that, like, sometimes I get so caught up in these little things, or these bullshits, or these disagreements, or the fact that with the coup and just the feelings that I had about, it's like living in the society, I feel like we're gaslit. A lot of people of color and marginalized folk are gaslit, and they're made to feel like they're being dramatic, or they're being emotional, or they're being dramatic. And it's like, you're never dramatic. You're just cautious because you know what this country is all about and what it's done to people who are not part of the majority. If you were in a place where maybe that's something you want to do, is like reconnect with a loved one, I really highly recommend Metzli. I just can't get over the fact that, like, my grandmother came through and my grandmother was the way she was. Well, hopefully you took something away from this. Really focus on your own spiritual healing. Spiritual bypassing is not cool. A couple of other examples of spiritual bypassing before we head out that I'd like to list off. So, being someone who is good vibes only, that is spiritual bypassing, because you are so stuck on the positivity, the good, the whatever, that, when friends are genuinely going through something, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to deal with it, you don't want to accept it. You want to be in your little rose-colored world of good vibes. So that would be spiritual bypassing. Another example would be not doing shadow work. Yeah, there's a lot of different examples of it. Those are just a few, and the ones that I listed earlier. So really just focus on yourself, your healing, your journey. Don't focus on anybody else, and you're going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. Well, thank you for listening. You can find me bunch of different places. You should definitely join me on Sundays for Brujeria Domingo. It is a space where we just talk magic, and if you're a little bit hungover from the night before, hair of the dog with some champagne, maybe have some macarons, treat yourself. Last week I was so blessed to have Lou. You might know her as At the Death Wish. She was on season 2. We just had a whole conversation about shamanism, specifically the gentleman like that I talked about in this episode. And they're just one of my favorite people in the whole world. And who knows who could join next week. Please stop by. If you are on Clubhouse, I'm at Bexby Caston. I'm also Bexby Caston on Twitter, Instagram, and you can follow the podcast at Tutia Bruja on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget, I'm always looking for individuals to collaborate or, work with, interviews. So if you would like to do that, log on to my website, bexbycaston.com, and let's have a conversation. Let's make some audio magic. Okay, bye friends. Take a deep breath, release all that tension, and have a good one. Bye.
Yeah.